Dr. Elena Santos had always believed that the most complex equations in xenobiology were nothing compared to the simple mathematics of making a 4-year-old eat her vegetables. Currently, she was losing that particular battle to a small person with her mother's luminescent amber eyes and an inherited stubbornness that transcended species barriers. "Zara, sweetie, the bionutrients in those root vegetables will help your scales grow properly," Elena said, wielding a fork with the desperate precision of someone who had given this exact speech 47 times in the past month. "Your mama worked very hard to cultivate them in our garden." Zara, perched in her specially designed chair that accommodated both human posture and Thalorian tail anatomy, regarded the offending vegetables with the kind of skepticism usually reserved for theoretical physics. Her scales, a beautiful silver blue that shifted color with her emotions, were currently showing the deep amber that Elena had learned meant absolutely not happening. "But Mama Elena," Zara said, her voice carrying the musical harmonics that marked her as half Thalorian, "the root things taste like sad dirt." Elena choked back a laugh. In the 3 months since Kurithis' accident, Zara had developed an increasingly creative vocabulary for expressing displeasure, and sad dirt was definitely a new one for the collection. "Sad dirt, huh?" Elena said, sitting down across from her daughter and abandoning the fork-based approach in favor of negotiation. "What if we pretended they were happy dirt, or maybe excited dirt that wants to help you grow big and strong?" Zara's scales shifted toward a more thoughtful blue-green. "Can dirt be excited?" "Absolutely. I once met a sentient mineral formation on Proxima Centauri b that was practically bouncing with enthusiasm about photosynthesis. Granted, it took 3 days to have a complete conversation, but the excitement was definitely there." The sound of footsteps in the hallway made both of them look up as Kurithis entered the kitchen, moving with the careful precision that had become her default since the neural trauma. Elena's heart did its usual complicated dance of love, hope, and barely concealed grief as she watched the woman who had once filled every room with vibrant energy now navigate their home like a cautious visitor. "Good morning," Kurithis said, her voice carrying the formal politeness that Elena had come to dread. "I hope I am not interrupting the midday nutrition cycle." "Never," Elena said quickly, gesturing to the empty chair. "We were just having a philosophical discussion about the emotional states of vegetables. Zara thinks the root vegetables are suffering from depression." Kurithis looked between them with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. "I see, that is an interesting perspective." Elena watched as Zara's scales shifted to a more subdued gray-blue, the child's emotions responding to her mother's distant tone with the sensitivity that made hybrid children both remarkable and heartbreaking. In the months before the accident, Kurithis and Zara had shared an intuitive connection that transcended language, their emotions resonating through bioelectrical fields in ways that still amazed Elena. Now that connection felt muted, interrupted by gaps in memory and understanding that left both mother and daughter fumbling for familiarity. "Mama Kira," Zara said carefully, using the formal address she'd adopted since her mother's return from the medical facility, "would you like to help with the light puzzle later? Mama Elena says it's good for practicing bioluminescent control." Elena's chest tightened as she watched Kurithis process the request, her amber eyes flickering with the effort of trying to remember whether this was something they had done before, whether it was appropriate, whether she was qualified to help with activities involving their daughter's hybrid abilities. "If you would like assistance, I would be pleased to provide it," Kurithis said finally, the words coming out in the stilted manner that suggested she was translating thoughts from a language she no longer quite spoke fluently. Zara's scales brightened slightly, though Elena could see the confusion beneath her daughter's polite acceptance. Elena forced herself to smile and turned back to the vegetable standoff, though her appetite for negotiation had largely evaporated. "Right then," she said with determined cheerfulness, "how about we compromise? You eat half the sad dirt vegetables, and I'll tell you about the time I accidentally started a diplomatic incident with a sentient mushroom colony. Did the mushrooms forgive you? Zara asked, her natural curiosity overriding her vegetable-related concerns. Eventually, though I'm still not allowed back on Kepler 62c without a formal apology letter and a gift basket of premium fertilizer. Zara giggled, the sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, and Alina caught a glimpse of Kurithis watching them with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Hope, maybe, mixed with something that looked almost like longing. The afternoon sun filtered through the bioluminescent leaves of their garden, casting dancing patterns of blue and green light across the living room, where Zara had constructed an elaborate fort out of cushions and her collection of light-generating toys. Alina was pretending to read research reports while actually monitoring the delicate interaction between Kurithis and their daughter, a skill she developed over the past 3 months of walking emotional tightropes. The photonic resonance in these educational devices is quite sophisticated, Kurithis observed, holding one of Zara's toys with the careful attention of a scientist examining an artifact. The biomimetic patterns could stimulate neural development in hybrid children. Mama Kira, you don't have to talk like you're in the lab, Zara said with the brutal honesty of childhood. It's okay to just say they're pretty. Alina winced, watching as Kurithis's expression flickered between hurt and confusion. The formal language had become a safety net for her partner, a way to navigate conversations when emotional context felt uncertain. But to Zara, it must sound like talking to a stranger wearing her mother's face. You are correct, Kurithis said carefully. They are very pretty. Would you like to show me how they function? Zara's scales brightened with genuine excitement as she began arranging the toys in complex patterns, her small hands moving with the unconscious grace that Alina had inherited from both parents. This one responds to touch, and this one changes color when you sing to it, and this one. She paused, looking up at Alina with the expression that meant she was about to drop a conversational bomb. This one only works when Daddy helps me with it because my biofield isn't strong enough yet. The silence that followed could have been measured with geological instruments. Alina felt every molecule of air in the room freeze as Kurithis turned to stare at her with wide amber eyes that held a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that looked dangerously close to betrayal. Daddy, Kurithis repeated, the word sounding foreign and sharp in her musical voice. Alina's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound emerged. Zara, sweetheart, remember we talked about using names instead of. But you are Daddy, Zara said with the implacable logic of a 4-year-old. You read the bedtime stories with the different voices, and you fix the broken toys, and you make the funny pancakes that look like alien faces, and you carry me when I get scared of the night sounds. That's what daddies do. Alina could practically hear her relationship with Kurithis reshaping itself in real time, assumptions crumbling and new fears taking their place. She looked at her partner's face and saw not just confusion, but the dawning realization that during the months of recovery, during the careful dance of relearning how to be a family, something fundamental had shifted without anyone acknowledging it. Kurithis, Alina began, her voice carefully controlled, you know I never encouraged this. I've been trying to maintain. Have you? Kurithis interrupted, her formal mask slipping to reveal raw emotion underneath. Have you been maintaining our family structure or have you been replacing me? The accusation hit Alina like a plasma blast to the chest. That's not fair. You were injured, you needed time to heal, and Zara needed what I apparently could not provide. Kurithis's scales were shifting through rapid color changes, her emotional control fragmenting under the weight of discovery. It seems that during my recovery, my role in this family has been redistributed. Alina could see Zara's confusion growing as the tension in the room spiked. her daughter's scales reflecting the emotional turbulence with rainbow patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. "Look," Alina said, standing up and moving toward the kitchen with the desperate hope that removing herself from the immediate area might diffuse the situation. "Why don't I make some tea, and we can discuss this calmly? Zara, why don't you show Mama Kira the puzzle box Grandma sent from Earth?" "Is Mama Kira angry?" Zara asked with the directness that Alina both loved and dreaded. "Her scales are doing the angry colors." "Mama Kira is just surprised," Alina said, which was possibly the understatement of the galactic year. Sometimes grown-ups need time to process unexpected information. Alina retreated to the kitchen and began the familiar ritual of preparing Thylaurian tea, her hands moving automatically while her mind raced through 3 months of unexamined assumptions. Had she been replacing Kurithis? Had her efforts to maintain stability become a form of emotional colonization? The questions felt like thorns in her throat. From the living room, she could hear Zara's bright chatter and Kurithis's increasingly strained responses, the conversation a painful reminder of how much ground they'd all lost and how uncertain the path forward had become. Alina found herself gripping the tea preparation tools with enough force to leave marks, fighting the urge to either scream or hide in the supply closet until this all somehow resolved itself. "Note to self," she muttered under her breath. "Add accidental parental role usurpation to the list of interspecies relationship challenges not covered in any textbook ever written." The sound of Kurithis's raised voice from the living room suggested that tea might not be sufficient to solve this particular diplomatic crisis. The next few days passed in a careful dance of avoidance that would have impressed professional diplomats and broke Alina's heart in approximately equal measure. Kurithis had retreated into polite formality, treating their home like a research facility where she was a visiting scholar rather than a partner and mother. Alina found herself overcompensating with aggressive cheerfulness, while Zara, with the supernatural sensitivity of hybrid children, became increasingly clingy and confused. "Mama Alina," Zara whispered during their third consecutive breakfast eaten in careful silence, "why does Mama Kira talk to me like I'm a stranger?" Alina looked across the table at Kurithis, who was studying her bionutrition supplement with the intensity of someone decoding ancient texts. "She's still recovering, sweetheart. Sometimes when people hurt their heads, it takes time for all the feelings to come back." "But I remember her feelings," Zara said, her scales shifting to the deep blue that meant sadness. "They felt warm and safe and like home. Now they feel like standing outside in the cold rain." Alina's throat tightened. "Sometimes we have to help people remember how to feel warm again." Kurithis looked up from her supplement, amber eyes flickering with something that might have been pain. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "it would be better if I relocated to the research facility temporarily, to avoid causing further confusion." "Absolutely not," Alina said, more sharply than she'd intended. "This is your home, Kira. Zara needs both of us, even if we're still figuring out what that looks like." "Does she?" Kurithis asked quietly. "Because from my observation, she has adapted quite well to having you as her primary attachment figure. Perhaps my presence is more disruptive than beneficial." Alina felt something crack inside her chest. "Kira, listen to me. Yes, things changed while you were recovering. Yes, Zara and I got closer. But that doesn't mean she doesn't need you. It means she needs us to figure out how to be a family again." "Again," Kurithis repeated, the word hanging in the air like a challenge. "As if we ever truly were one, rather than an experiment in interspecies compatibility that was interrupted by neural trauma." Alina stared at her partner, seeing not just the memory gaps but the fear underneath, fear that she had never really belonged in their makeshift family, that her accident had simply revealed a truth that everyone was too polite to acknowledge. That evening, after Zara had fallen asleep between them in their bed, a compromise they'd reached when their daughter refused to sleep alone while the adults were making sad faces at each other. Alina found herself downloading every video, audio recording, and photo from the months before Kurithis' accident. If memories weren't returning naturally, maybe they needed art. "What are you doing?" Kurithis asked from her side of the bed, her voice carefully neutral. "Research," Alina replied, pulling up a video from Zara's third birthday party. "Scientific method applied to relationship reconstruction. Hypothesis: if I can show you who we were, maybe you can remember who we still are." The video began playing softly, showing Kurithis laughing as 3-year-old Zara attempted to blow out bioluminescent candles that reignited themselves as soon as her breath touched them. On screen, Kurithis was radiant, her scales shifting through joyful colors as she helped their daughter figure out the trick to extinguishing Thylaurian celebration lights. "I look happy," present-day Kurithis observed, her voice carrying surprise. "You were happy," Alina confirmed. "We all were. Look here." She forwarded to a section where video Kurithis was patiently teaching Zara how to modulate her bioluminescence while Alina provided running commentary that had everyone laughing. "You kept trying to make jokes about my teaching methods," Kurithis said, and Alina caught the faintest smile tugging at her partner's lips. "I kept trying to lighten the mood because you were taking it so seriously. You wanted Zara to have perfect control of her abilities, and I kept reminding you that she was 3 and still figuring out how to tie her shoes." They watched in silence as Video Alina swooped in to comfort Video Zara after a particularly frustrating attempt at light control, while Video Kurithis provided gentle guidance and encouragement. The 3 figures on screen moved together with easy familiarity, their interactions flowing with the kind of unconscious coordination that came from months of shared experience. "We were a good team," Kurithis said quietly. "We were," Alina agreed. "And we can be again. It won't look exactly the same, and we'll have to be intentional about rebuilding instead of just letting it happen naturally, but perhaps," Kurithis interrupted, her amber eyes reflecting the soft glow from Zara's sleeping form, "that is not necessarily a disadvantage. Perhaps a consciously constructed family unit is stronger than one that develops through circumstance alone." Alina felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. "Are you saying you want to try?" "I am saying," Kurithis replied, reaching across their sleeping daughter to touch Alina's hand, "that watching those recordings reminded me that I am not just recovering from neural trauma. I am recovering a life worth living." For the first time in months, Alina felt like maybe they could find their way back to each other after all. The camping trip to the luminescent grove had seemed like inspired problem-solving when Alina suggested it. Return to the place where she and Kurithis first fell in love. Let the familiar environment work its magic on damaged neural pathways, and give Zara a chance to experience her parents working together in a setting removed from the careful tensions of home. What Alina hadn't anticipated was their daughter developing a fever in the middle of an alien forest, with the nearest medical facility 3 hours away by shuttle. "Her temperature is spiking again," Alina said, checking the portable scanner with growing concern. "But this isn't following human fever patterns. Her bioluminescence is fluctuating wildly, and I'm seeing energy discharges that shouldn't be possible at her age." Zara lay curled in her sleeping bag, her scales cycling through rapid color changes that painted the inside of their bioluminescent shelter in shifting rainbows. Her small body shivered despite the warmth Alina was trying to provide, and her breathing carried harmonics that suggested her hybrid physiology was struggling to regulate itself. "She needs biorhythmic stabilization," Kurithis said, kneeling beside their daughter with more decisiveness than Alina had seen from her in months. "Human medical protocols will not address the Thylaurian aspects of her condition." "Then tell me what to do," Alina said, pushing aside her own expertise to focus on learning from someone who understood their daughter's alien heritage. "I know human child care, but this is beyond my knowledge base." Kurithis placed her hands on either side of Zara's head, her own scales beginning to glow with a steady rhythm. Thylaurian children synchronize their bioelectrical fields with their parents during illness. It stabilizes their systems and promotes healing. But Zara is hybrid. She may need synchronization from both of us simultaneously. Alina watched as Kurithis' touch began to calm some of Zara's chaotic color shifts, though the child's fever remained dangerously high. "What do I need to do?" "Place your hands here on her shoulders," Kurithis instructed, guiding Alina's positioning. "Try to match your heartbeat to mine, your breathing to hers." Thylaurian healing is about harmony, not just medicine. Alina followed the instructions, letting her breathing synchronize with their daughter's labored rhythm, while Kurithis maintained the bioelectrical connection. Gradually, she began to feel something she'd never experienced before, a subtle resonance that seemed to flow between the three of them, connecting them in ways that transcended species boundaries. "That's it," Kurithis said softly, her amber eyes meeting Alina's across their daughter's small form. "I can feel your pattern integrating with ours. Zara's systems are responding." They worked together through the night, taking turns monitoring Zara's temperature while maintaining the healing connection that required both human consistency and Thylaurian intuition. During the long hours, they talked quietly about techniques Alina had never heard of and insights that seemed to return to Kurithis as she accessed the deep parental instincts that neural trauma couldn't completely erase. "I remember this," Kurithis said as dawn began to filter through the grove's luminescent canopy. "Not the specific details, but the feeling of being responsible for her well-being, of being essential to her survival." "You are essential," Alina said firmly. "I can keep her fed and entertained and educationally stimulated, but I can't give her what you just gave her. I can't connect to the Thylaurian parts of her nature." Zara stirred in her sleep, her scales finally settling into the healthy blue-green that indicated stable body temperature. "Mama K," she whispered, using Alina's voice but looking at Kurithis. "I feel better now." "That is very good news, little star," Kurithis said, stroking Zara's forehead with gentle fingers. "You gave us quite a scare." Zara sat up slowly, looking between her parents with the serious expression she wore when processing complex information. "Mama E, Mama K, are you going to stop being sad at each other now?" Alina felt laughter bubbling up in her chest, the kind of slightly hysterical relief that comes after crisis passes. "We're going to try very hard to stop being sad at each other, sweetheart." "Good," Zara said with satisfaction. "Because when you're sad it makes my scales feel itchy, and that's very annoying." Kurithis made a sound that might have been laughter, her own scales brightening for the first time in months. "We cannot have itchy scales. That would be a serious medical condition requiring immediate treatment." "With tickles?" Zara asked hopefully. "Definitely with tickles," Alina confirmed, launching a gentle assault that had their daughter giggling and squirming while Kurithis watched with growing warmth in her amber eyes. Later, as they packed up their camping gear and prepared to return home, Kurithis helped Zara identify the different species of luminescent fungi, while Alina handled the technical equipment. Their conversation flowed naturally, with Kurithis' scientific knowledge complementing Alina's practical approach to child-rearing in ways that felt both familiar and newly intentional. "Alina," Kurithis said as they loaded the shuttle, "I have been thinking about family reconstruction methodology." "Oh good," Alina replied with mock seriousness, "because I love it when you get scientific about our relationship. It's very romantic." "I am serious," Kurithis said, though her scales showed amusement colors. "I believe we should approach this systematically. Identify our individual strengths as parents, develop protocols for decision-making and conflict resolution, and establish new traditions that acknowledge our current reality rather than trying to recreate our previous dynamic." Alina considered this, watching as Zara settled into her travel seat with a collection of bioluminescent specimens they'd gathered together. "So you're suggesting we engineer our family instead of just letting it evolve naturally?" "I am suggesting," Kurithis said, taking Alina's hand with more confidence than she'd shown in months. That we build something stronger and more intentional than what we had before. Something that can survive neural trauma and memory gaps in 4-year-olds who think vegetables have emotional disorders. Alina squeezed her partner's hand, feeling the bioelectrical warmth that marked Thalorian affection. I love you too, Kira. Both versions of you, the one I fell in love with and the one I'm getting to know now. Mama E, Mama K, Zara called from her seat. Can we have the funny pancakes for breakfast tomorrow? The ones that look like the mushroom creatures from the grove. Absolutely, Alina said, sharing a look with Kurithis that held promise and possibility, and the recognition that some families are worth rebuilding from the ground up. But only if you promise to eat your vegetables without questioning their emotional stability. Deal, Zara said solemnly, her scales glowing with contentment as their shuttle lifted off toward home.